Okay, I'm going to try to go a little more in line with the reading this 6 weeks. So I'm going to be looking today at information that starts on page 219 through about 226, roughly. We talked today in class about the Marbury case and the election of 1800 and the significance of that peaceful transfer of power between the Federalists and the Democratic Republicans when Jefferson became president in 1800. We also talked about the fact that, to the disappointment of many of his Democratic Republican followers, he does not completely dismantle the Federalist program, specifically the bank, the tariff, things like that, but that he keeps them. He's going to have plenty of other things to keep him busy as president, one of which is interference from pirates off the Barbary coast of Africa. Now, this is the Mediterranean coast of Africa, and if you look on page 220 in your book, you will see a map at the top that identifies this area. And basically what had been going on is we had, along with Great Britain, France, Europe, had been paying these pirates off this north coast of Africa a certain amount of money to let us trade freely in the Mediterranean. So basically they were bribing us. We paid X amount of money and they didn't interfere with our shipping. And so the pirates come to Jefferson and they want, I'm trying to look for the year, I'm not sure of the year here, 1805, a little before 1805, 1801, and say, we want more money. And so Jefferson was like, I'm not paying you more money, and even in addition to that, I'm just not going to pay you at all. And so we have this state of undeclared war, between us and these Barbary pirates for about 4 years. Finally, we negotiate a peace treaty, and we end up not paying any more bribes to them. And so it gives the appearance to Europe, who is continuing to pay them, that we are probably quite a bit stronger, or we look stronger than we actually are, because of Jefferson's refusal to continue paying the bribes. As a result of this, too, Jefferson's going to expand the Navy somewhat, even though he dismantles the Army to a good extent. Keep in mind that a standing army, in the minds of people who've survived the Revolution, is always going to equal problems, whereas a Navy is primarily to exert influence on other parts of the world. So even though he's going to stick to the idea of neutrality, as Washington and Adams had, there are going to be times when we are going to have to be able to protect ourselves on the seas, and we'll be talking about that a little bit more later this week. In the meantime, we know that Spain had received New Orleans and Louisiana Territory as a gift from France for coming to the French aid after the French and Indian War. Excuse me. Rumors began appearing in the early 1800s that Spain was going to give this territory back to France. Our problem was not so much with the Louisiana Territory, it was with New Orleans. Once our western boundary was the Mississippi River, our farmers needed access to the Mississippi to be able to ship goods downriver and then export them through the port at New Orleans. They also needed the right of deposit at New Orleans, which was we can store our products until ships arrive to actually transport them. It was rumored that France was going to take over, and in the meantime, Spain cut off our right of deposit. So Jefferson sends envoy to negotiate with Napoleon, well, the Spanish and then Napoleon when it actually falls under Napoleon's control, to purchase New Orleans for $10 million. Well, Napoleon has got his own issues at this point. He originally wanted that territory back to recreate the North American colony of New France. But he had tried to do that in Haiti and had a lot of problems, had spent a fortune, lost a lot of his soldiers. Sorry. Had to deal with a slave rebellion. It had just been one disaster after another. And so the idea of maintaining North American colonies was not as appealing as it had been before all of these events had happened. He also needs money to continue fighting the British in Europe. So he counter-proposes to sell all of the Louisiana Territory to us for $15 million. Our representatives to France were shocked. They're not real sure what to do, so they come back, they speak with President Jefferson, and Jefferson is thrilled with the idea, but he's got this issue of constitutionality. Jefferson, remember, was a strict interpretation, or had a strict interpretation of the Constitution, and nowhere in the Constitution does it say the president can purchase territory. Now, he was going to purchase New Orleans for trade purposes, but the rest of the territory, it was unclear as to what purpose it would serve. And so he really had this dilemma. And he debated, he secretly proposed a constitutional amendment that would allow him to do it, but that takes a lot of time, and they were afraid Napoleon would change his mind. And he really, really debated about this issue. Finally, senators convinced him to go ahead and purchase it, and that the Constitution's power of treaty making given to the president would allow him to purchase this land through treaty. And so that's what he eventually does. We purchase the Louisiana Territory, more than double the geographic size of the United States, for $15 million. It comes out to less, I think it says somewhere in here, like 3 cents an acre. It was a huge bargain. Jefferson, of course, being the scientist that he was, wants to see what he's bought. So he hires Meriwether Lewis and William Clark to explore the northern part of the Louisiana Territory. It takes them 3 years. They come back, they write up a report. They are introduced to various new native tribes. They bring back samples of new animals, new plants. They make it all the way to the Pacific Ocean and come back and share their findings. We also have another explorer, Zebulon Pike, and he's mentioned on 223. And he explores the southern route of the Louisiana Territory, and Pike's Peak is actually named for him. Other issues that Jefferson deals with, Aaron Burr, remember, had been his vice president. In Jefferson's second term, Burr is dropped from the ticket and dropped from the cabinet completely. And Burr feels like, of course, he's gotten the short end of the deal. He should have been president, and that doesn't happen. So the first thing he does is he negotiates with Federalists in New York to try to win the governorship of New York, and then when he won, they were going to secede from the United States. Well, he doesn't win, and so that plan falls through. He then goes west to the Louisiana Territory, tries to negotiate with the military governor of the Louisiana Territory that they are going to come back and invade Mexico and Florida and then launch an attack against the United States. Well, the military governor gets cold feet and confesses what's going to happen and betrays Burr. So Burr goes on trial for treason. Now, he's not convicted, But this is an important first step in helping further define the Constitution's meaning of treason. It's the only crime mentioned in the Constitution, and since it was just an idea that never actually took place, he is found not guilty. He then goes to Great Britain, where he tries to convince Napoleon to launch an attack against the United States, which doesn't happen either. So he is just all in all very disgruntled and causes a lot of problems for Jefferson. Oh, and I forgot to mention that after he loses the governorship of New York, he blames Hamilton for this and calls Hamilton out in a duel, which of course we know he ends up killing Alexander Hamilton. So one of our early leaders, especially for the Federalist Party, is no longer in the picture. That's where I'm going to stop for now, and I will continue with more for tomorrow night. I'm not quite to page 226. Go ahead and read this section entitled America, a Nutcrackered Neutral, and we will talk about maintaining American neutrality at sea and the embargo tomorrow. Have a good evening. Bye.